Great. It looks like we're live. And, um, oh, I need to turn off my phone. Uh, so this is Dr. Kathy Marshak, and our topic today is it loneliness or am I just misunderstood by my neurodiverse loved one? And I want to remind people that I'll probably restart this a few times as people discover that I am live. It takes a minute for it to get to your Facebook page and let you know that I'm here. So I don't mind starting over again, but I also want to mention that this topic is also for the neurodiverse. It could also say, is it loneliness or am I just misunderstood by my neurotypical loved one? Uh, we are Originally, I started my groups for neurotypicals because I was working myself through my own dilemmas of being a neurotypical, having been raised by an autistic mother, married to an autistic husband, and raising an autistic daughter and a neurotypical daughter. So it was, I started out all those years ago. My first book, Going Over the Edge, was published in 2009, my first book on autism and in neurodivergent relationships. So it took me a while to, come to terms with the fact that the picture is much bigger than dealing with my own distress over this. But it's a good thing I did because I needed to clear up a lot of these things like we're going to talk about today about the loneliness. I need to clear that up for myself. I needed to understand better what other people were doing as they were going through this experience of trying to, discover who they are and rebuild their relationships or rebuild their own lives, that sort of thing. And then over the years, and I'm kind of rambling here at the beginning because we're not quite on topic, but I wanted to give people a chance to join me. Over the years, what I did is as I grew, as I figured things out, then I wrote a second book, and that was on parenting with a partner on the autism spectrum. And as you can see with the titles, they're always about the neurotypical's experience with a neurodiverse partner. So the first one was Going Over the Edge or Life with a Partner with Asperger's Syndrome or ASD. Second book, Parenting or Out of Mind, Out of Sight, Parenting with a Partner on the spectrum essentially. The third book was a little bit of a departure, but it is called When Empathy Fails, How to Stop Those Hell-Bent on Destroying You. So it's looking at the dark side and trying to understand empathy dysfunction, something I was coming to terms with. And then after that, I got this idea for a fourth book, and it's entitled Empathy is More Than Words. Empathy is more than words. I started coming up with the empathy triad, the map of empathy territory, the balance between empathy dysfunction or empathy triad blind and empathy triad sensitive. And so I was starting to look at the bigger picture, not just the pain and suffering that many people with autism go through. Oh, and it says I have reactions over here, but I don't see anything. Oh, okay. That must mean you can hear me and see me. If somebody gave me a thumbs up, that must mean that I'm actually coming through loud and clear. I hope so. And remember, I look over here to see if there's comments, because if you make a comment, I'm happy to talk about that too. So Empathy is More Than Words was really the beginning of tools for neurodivergent couples. It was really looking at it from both sides. It wasn't just how do we cope as neurotypicals in these neurodivergent relationships. Now it was more like, well, wait a minute. There's another way. Oh, thank you, James. There's another way to look at this that I needed to come to terms to, and so do you. We all need to figure out how to get out of our own suffering and our own confusion, how to get out of the way so that we can be curious about what's going on there. And then after that happened, it led me to look at my first book again, Going Over the Edge. And I rewrote that book and republished the anniversary edition just last year. And it is a different book. As I look at now, what I understand is that Empathy isn't all it's cracked up to be, even though, of course, we want to work toward becoming more empathic, more aware of others that we're in relationship with. But if you're only empathic, but not strong enough to step up and take action and be curious and seek solutions with your neurodiverse partner, then you're just as dysfunctional as the neurodiverse person is if they're not willing to be curious. And so the next evolution of all of this is to become empathy triad engaged. And that was a term given to me by a reader, and he's on the spectrum. And what he realized is that, yes, it's true, empathy is a stretch for him in terms of empathy being right here in the moment, getting it now, staying connected with that other person in the moment, which is what neurotypicals do. But he knew that he wanted to do better. And he thought, you know what, if we use Dr. Marshak's 7-step interface protocol, I can become more empathy triad engaged. Maybe not as empathic, smoothly empathic as neurotypicals are because of the autism, but I can certainly be more respectful of that process. So I think that's pretty cool. So today is, like I said, the topic is still kind of on that negative side. Is it loneliness, or am I just misunderstood by my neurodiverse loved one? And like I said, it could be neurodiverse or neurotypical. I feel misunderstood either way. And the reason that it feels lonely, because as human beings, we want to connect, right? We want to know that the other person gets us, and they need to know we get them. And so that's the rub. If you're highly empathic, we can send a message that we get the other person fairly quickly. We can just offer a nod. We can lean forward. We can take a breath in, like, oh, and say something like that, and it gives the message back that we get you, if we do. For neurodiverse folks, it's harder to do that. There's a disconnect often. There's alexithymia, so there's a disconnect between the various types of empathy, cognitive, emotional, intuitive empathy. There's a disconnect between those three empathies, or one of them, and the context, the contextual cues, because you need intuition, emotional empathy, and cognitive empathy to pick up the right cognitive or emotional or intuitive cue in the context of the relationship. And sometimes there's a disconnect. Well, then there would be a disconnect if you're not picking up the contextual cues of being able to talk about it. So we feel lonesome either way because the other person doesn't get us and doesn't give us signals that they get us. So I'll come back and talk more about that, and I will answer questions if you have any about this concept. I don't want you to think your feelings are wrong because you feel misunderstood or you feel lonely. As human beings, we are wired for each other. We are pack animals. We are wired for each other. And if we don't have that ability to connect with others, we're worried that we're going to be left by the side of the road to be picked off by wolves. Our survival on the planet as an animal, as a species, required that we formed relationships, families, clans, villages, and took care of each other. In fact, Margaret Mead said that. She was asked once, a famous anthropologist, she was asked once, what was the definition of civilization? When did civilization start? What's the definition of empathy in action? But she was mostly just asked, what's civilization? And so she picks up this human femur, prehistoric fossilized femur, and she points to a crack in the femur that healed. So whenever a bone is broken, the bone heals back, but on x-rays and MRIs and stuff like that, they can see where the bone was cracked but has healed because there's extra bone laid down to bring those bones back together. She holds up this prehistoric bone and she says, this is a sign of our survival on the planet. Our empathy helped us take care of each other. And why is that? Because whoever that was, whoever that prehistoric person was who broke his or her leg, somebody had to take that person back and to the cave and warm them up and feed them and bind their legs so that it would grow back together properly. Somebody did that. Prehistoric. It wasn't written down. So this is what we need from each other. We need to be taken care of and to be understood. And granted, all those years ago, maybe understanding another person was fairly easy. You know, it's pretty much survival. Let's get food. Let's stay warm. Let's take care of the children and the elderly people. Whatever. It was pretty simple. It's just now it's much more complex. Right? It's much more complex, but it's still what we all need. We want to be understood, whether you're neurodiverse or neurotypical. We want to be understood because if we're understood, we feel safer. Loneliness means we're frightened. We're worried. Okay, so let me go over what we do in our groups. There are a number of ways, and I listed them in the prelude for the conference today about how to get a hold of our groups. These events that I'm going to tell you about are private events for group members. This Facebook page is open to anybody who wants to drop in and learn something. But the groups are all private. You either have to join the meetup group or the premium community forum or take my course. You can certainly listen to podcasts. And by the way, the podcasts now, I also have something I call my after party. So when you listen to the podcast, you can go over and look in my calendar and see if there's a discussion, an after party discussion about that topic that I've talked with you about. So it's similar to our Facebook Lives, except you actually get to meet other people because it's a video call. Okay, so the first event that I'm hosting in April, this is for next month, April 9th, is Help. I feel so alone in my ASD-NT relationship. So of course this is what we're talking about. Help. How do I keep myself strong and capable when I feel so dang alone? And the reason you feel alone, so what I was talking about, is because you're not talking the same language. You're talking at cross purposes. People on the spectrum tend to be more transactional because they have that disconnect between the types of empathy, context, and conversation. And so they rely a lot on transactional language, which isn't very warm and fuzzy and connecting. And so that's Wednesday, April 9th. We'll talk about sort of in general how that loneliness feels, that you're not alone, that it really is okay to feel that way because it's biological. It's just that we have to find other ways to cope so that we don't give in to that and get depressed. Then the next conference for the month, April 16th, is Why Am I So Angry When My Aspie Says Dumb Things? But you could also apply this to the neurotypical, and I have a client, by the way, who calls us neurotypicals nipicals. Well, he and a few other people on Reddit call us nipicals. So why do I get so angry when my partner says dumb things? Again, it feels as if you weren't heard. When they say something that's a disconnect from where you were going, it feels that for the neurodiverse, it feels as if we're being interrupted. For the neurotypical, it feels threatening. You weren't listening to me. You weren't listening to me, you were listening to my words, which is why my fourth book is, right? Empathy is more than words. It's other messages too. So we get angry, which is different than loneliness, but it's similar. Anger is an attempt to survive this intolerable situation where you feel like you're being cut off from breath, from your air, being able to be a person. Then the third topic of the month is on April 23rd, and these are all small group video conferences, by the way. These ones I'm announcing right now, these first three are small group video conferences where there's maybe 7, 5, 8 other people in the video call that you can interact with. I do record the audio, and later you can listen to it if you're a member of the premium forum. If you're a member of the premium forum, you don't have to pay for the video conferences. You can attend as many as you want to, and then you can go into the forum later and chat with other people about the conference. The same with the podcast. You get to go in and talk to other people on a live video call, but later you're going to be able to listen to that call, the audio portion, and chat about it with others if you found it helpful. And a lot of people, by the way, listen to dozens of these recordings. I have recordings going back to 2009, and they are amazing. Some of them sound kind of, maybe old or something, but the topic is still fresh because we're dealing with a very unusual life, right? You're involved in a very unusual life when you're in neurodivergent relationships. And remember, I'll kind of explain this again. Neurotypicals are non-spectrum people. NeuroDiverse are usually autistic people, at least in our group. There are other types of neurodiversity, but I tend to use it to mean autistic or ASD folks. And then neurodivergent means that the neurotypical and the neurodiverse person are diverging in the way they process information, and it often causes conflict, right? So neurodiverse people have a more transactional operating system up there. Neurotypicals have a more interactional operating system. I can answer questions if you have them about that. Okay, so the third conference, video conference of the month, is on April 23rd, and it's Why Do I Have to Repeat Things Again and Again and Again? Right? Why do I have to repeat things? And again, it can go both ways. The neurotypical is wondering, why do I have to repeat something? If you were following me, not my words, if you were following me, then you would get the gist of what I'm talking about. But for that neurodiverse person, they're hanging on your words and trying to understand, what it means. They're not actually incorporating their intuition and their emotions and pulling from context what you mean. Then for neurodiverse folks, why do I have to repeat myself? It's a different question entirely. If you notice that neurotypicals repeat themselves a lot, it's because they're throwing out a little wire or a little string. Are you still there? Are you with me? They repeat themselves to make sure that we're still connected emotionally. Whereas neurodiverse people sit there and just listen, and they kind of wonder, why are you asking the same question? So why do they have to repeat themselves? They don't have to. The neurodiverse can start learning to say, oh, yeah, I'm here. I got you. I get what you're talking about. But the neurotypical is throwing out the question again, saying something over and over again, waiting for you, the neurodiverse person, to nod your head, that you're there, that you're alive and breathing and hear what they have to say instead of that flat look. How many of you noticed that, by the way? It's kind of interesting. Sometimes people come into the session, couples, for example, a neurotypical and a neurodiverse person, and the neurodiverse person doesn't say a word. So I'm busy chatting away with the neurotypical, and pretty soon I turn to the neurodiverse person and I say, really, you can join us at any time, which is a very interactive method. And the neurodiverse person 9 times out of 10 says, oh, I didn't know you were talking to me. When I'm talking to both of them, I didn't know you were talking to me. Or they say something like, oh, I was just waiting for you to ask me a question. Transactional. That's transactional. A conversation among neurotypicals is this free-flowing give and take. But with a transactional person, it's like they're waiting for the question. They want to oblige, but they don't realize that all that extra stuff is the way neurotypicals stay connected. Okay, then really another important event on April 10th. And once a month we have our video call with Julie. And that call is called Going Over the Edge in Your Neurodivergent Relationships, Time to Take Back Your Life. So that'll be on April 10th. That's a free call to members, no charge, and it's an opportunity. Dr. Julie, I keep saying Dr. Julie. Julie is in New Zealand, so she tries to hold it at a time that will be convenient for more than one time zone. It's usually in the afternoon, Pacific time. I'm on Pacific time. And what she does is she just kind of handles all those newbie questions that you have, or those things you want to know about. Well, which conference should I take, or what part of this extensive network of resources should I take you up on? In fact, one of the links I have in the preamble to this conference is the link to all the resources that I offer: podcasts, books, courses, online courses, our premium forum, our meetup forum. There's a number of resources, and lots of times people aren't sure where to start. And I always foolishly say start wherever you want to, because I figure as soon as you start to explore this stuff, you're that much further ahead than waiting to start in the right place. Just gather the data. It's kind of like having your desk overflowing and you're not sure where to start. Just pick up a piece of paper and start with that. But Julie's better than me. She talks with you about her life of being in a neurodivergent relationship and raising a neurodivergent family for many, many years. And she might even tell you the story of how we first met. We have never met in person. It's only online. Well, or a video call. But the first time we met, we were in interesting places in our lives. So ask her about that. Okay, then the next thing on the list is the free webinar for course members only. It's entitled, Is My Relationship in Crisis, or Is This an Opportunity for Change? So this is, I have several courses, but this is the main course for neurodivergent couples. So this is a course where both neurodiverse and neurotypical can, thanks, James. I'll get to that in just a minute. This is a course where both neurotypical and neurodiverse can take it together. It's online. You can watch the videos. You can take the little quizzes. You can take notes. You can watch the videos over and over again. You have a whole year to take it. And then once a month, we host a live webinar of people in the course. And this is the one place that you will have a chance to interact with other couples or individuals who are dealing with a neurodivergent relationship. So every webinar, I usually have, 3 or 4 neurodivergent couples who attend, plus I'll have individuals. Sometimes the individuals are on the spectrum, sometimes the individuals are NT or a mix. And what's really valuable about this is not just that you're taking the course and you can ask these kind of questions, but you get to hear what other people are going through that are in your situation, but they might live in Alabama or Switzerland or New Zealand, right? I think it's so valuable to come to these webinars, but you do have to be signed up for the course because I want you to have that basic information that I offer in the course. And let's see here. Then in April, right now we're just starting the podcast after party discussions, but I will have both after party discussions for the course and for the premium forum and for meetup. We're just getting them going. I have probably 50 podcasts recorded already. I've been just going crazy about doing this. And so many of those will be uploaded, but there won't be yet an after party for that particular podcast just yet. It'll come throughout the year as we get them tucked into my schedule. So the first one is April 17th, and it's based on the podcast Break the Cycle of Abuse. Break the cycle of abuse. Abuse is that loneliness and that anger escalating to a place where you're just furious with the other person and you say things you wished you hadn't, right? Or they say things that they wish they hadn't later, or you feel justified. Anyway, we're going to break the cycle of abuse by understanding better these diverging operating systems. That's what this month is about, really kind of digging into that. Let's see, I want to make sure I'm gone. Okay, so next month's theme is, this would be for May, so you don't have to worry about that yet, but it will be, how do I cope with the constant triggering in my neurodivergent relationships? And I will have podcast after parties, course webinars, webinars for both Meetup and the Premium Forum. It's all going to be posted for you to attend. And if you can't, if at least you're in the Premium Forum or the course, you can listen to recordings. Those two have recordings. Another thing I want to let you know about is I'm almost ready to launch my course that I've been talking about for years, which is called Conversational Aspergian. conversational Aspergian, and I have podcast after parties for that one as well. I realized that when I gave you the basic course to take, which has lots of tons of information in it, that that you might also just want to know, um, have some guidelines as to how to progress through a conversation in a neurodivergent relationship. So one of my clients years ago, he was on the spectrum, or he is on the spectrum, and he had a great sense of humor. And I don't see him anymore, but he had a great sense of humor. And he came in one day and he says, Dr. M, you should create an app that I can use, actually, that I can give to my neurotypical wife so that she could understand me better. And I said, well, that sounds a great idea. What would we call it? And he said, let's call it Conversational Aspergian. And even though it's not an app, it's a course, I want you to sort of think of it that way. Because if we're curious about how the other person thinks, we might be able to come up with a way to talk to them. So that's what that course is about. And hopefully it'll launch pretty soon. It's almost ready. But I don't want to give you a date because I feel nervous about that. Okay, so I've covered all this basic stuff, and then I'm ready for questions. And I want to emphasize James has posted in the chat over here that he's hosting a Zoom after party for today's Facebook. It's totally informal, just casually talk and get to know each other. And I'm just reading what he wrote and talk about what we have in common. Curious if anyone's interested. And he has listed the time as, yes, 2 Pacific time, so you'll just have to clock that in for yourselves. And he's even got the link there, the Zoom link, to join him, so that's very generous. Sometimes what people leave with from our conferences is that they don't want to talk some more to people. They don't want to just leave a comment in the Facebook Live, and that's why we have the podcast after parties, or now we've got a Facebook after party that James is offering to host, and he's a member of the Premium Forum, and he can probably tell you a lot about what's going on in our communities as well. But I want to point this out. Community is where it's at. We need each other to clear up the mystery. We've been living with the mystery for a really long time. And we've tried everything we each know. The neurotypical tries neurotypical strategies. The neurodiverse person tries neurodiverse strategies. And what happens when you do that? When you've done that for years. I know it's hard to believe. It doesn't work. When you go to therapists who want you to do neurotypical strategies only, it doesn't work because, well, I'll tell you why in a moment, but what happens is you become what I call polarized. You are so backed into corners, so distressed, so lonely, so angry, so confused, so not saying nice things to your partner that it seems like there's no coming back. Right? So what we need to do is to start learning about those different operating systems so that we can stay out of the loneliness and the anger, or if we get into it because it's just human, that we clean up our space sooner than later so that we can step back in and ask what's going on with the other person or share what's going on with us. And by the way, I am going to lean toward the neurotypical. The solution is interaction. It's not for neurodiverse folks to just stay quiet and never express an opinion. It's not for neurotypicals to keep throwing out those lifelines. Please, please talk with me. That doesn't work either. But I like the idea of the empathy triad engaged approach, where you go through the 7-step interface protocol, make it an attempt to connect, giving messages to the other person that you care about them, that you want to get what's going on. Or if you're tired and you really don't want to do it, how to break break it up without being disrespectful. Like just saying, I'm kind of worn out. I know there's more to talk about. Can we try it again after dinner? It's okay to take breaks. I mean, that's what the 7 steps are about. It's about being resilient, right? It's step 1 is resilience. Step 2 is accepting the diagnosis. And what I mean by that is realize that one of you is on the autism spectrum and the other one isn't. You have different operating systems. We need to accept that. We process information differently. And if we keep trying to understand it from one point of view or the other, we won't get anywhere. Right? And it's important to also respect the empathy triad, because if we're not going to use empathy or an approximation of it, empathy triad engaged, then it's not going to work. There needs to be an interaction between neurodiverse and neurotypical that's respectful and loving and works, or the relationship will fail. And then other steps include taking breaks, making sure that you apologize, make sure that you're there. I outline this in the course and in my books. So the 7-step interface protocol, just remember that name. You can even Google it and you'll come up with all the steps. But ultimately, it's sort of between being resilient, I'm not giving up, I'm going to step back in and do it again, and at the other end of that 7-step is forgiveness and apologies. Forgive yourself for not getting it right, and apologizing to the other person for missing who they are when they don't get, that's the topic today. How come I feel so lonely? Because they don't get me. The bottom piece is keep trying to get them. Let them know you're there. You may not understand what they're talking about, but you want to. That feels good to both neurotypical and neurodiverse. I'm going to look and see if I've got any other questions in here. So far, I don't, but it's really okay to ask me anything. It doesn't even have to be on this topic. Because one of the things that we start learning in my courses is that it's always about the same stuff. It's about this ability we have to grow our empathy skills, step out into radiant empathy, which isn't just being empathic. Neurotypicals who are only empathic but are too weak to say anything, that's not empathy really. I mean, it is. They're empathic, they're picking up cues, but radiant empathy is the ability to pick up those cues and take some action, right? And if you're neurodiverse, you may not be able to pick up the cues immediately, or you may not be very practiced at knowing what they mean, but you can take breaks, right? You can take breaks and say, you know what, I don't quite get this, but I want to. Can I go get a glass of water and then let's come back and talk again? Or can I just go for a walk? Or can we talk about this tomorrow? If you take a break, either side really, but when neurodiverse people take a break, they often put the pieces together that they couldn't put together in the moment. And that's rewarding. And Louise says, remind me to get the link for after group Zoom. I think it's still going to be posted, Louise, but you can cut and paste it now. So Anna says, being in the situation is a lonely relationship, so I've had to look for other hobbies and live a different life than I had envisioned. Okay, she doesn't have to, but she's found a way to be resilient. See, that's the part of Anna's saying, I've come to find other ways to help me do my life so that I feel rewarded, loved, appreciated, and so forth. But another important thing is that this is her life is different than she thought it would be. All of us have to face that, right? All of us need to face that. By the time you're an adult, it's probably a lot different than especially if you're by a 40-year-old adult. By the time you're 40, you're starting to say, wait a minute, this earth is different than I thought it would be, right? So resilient people in that 7-step protocol, if you're resilient and you're practicing all the steps in between, and you get down to forgiving yourself and the other person, you often say, well, this is what I got. Let me see what I can do with this. As opposed to I want to fix the other person or I want to escape, right? Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Those stress methods don't work very well here, right? Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Have you heard that expression before? It's understandable that we want to do that stuff. It makes sense that we're trying to figure out how to survive a stressful situation, but it really doesn't make the relationship work better. You just accommodate your fear or your anger, right? In fact, I remember a woman one day coming into her session, and her husband was on the spectrum. She was neurotypical, and she was just always annoyed with the screwball things he would do. And then one day she comes online, it was a video call, and she goes, I'm fine. I'm just fine now. I figured it out. It's me. What she figured out was that she needed to manage her anger instead of wanting him to be different. I mean, he's capable of being different because as a human being, we can keep growing and changing whether you're neurodiverse or neurotypical. But if her happiness depended on him doing things a certain way for her, then she could never be happy. And she got it. She says, wow, he contributes a lot to my life, and I really appreciate it, but I'm sick and tired of being angry over stuff that I can't fix myself. I want to go after the stuff I can. And I think that's what Anna is alluding to. She's going after things she can work on instead of her dream of the way it was. Now that doesn't mean that that's easy to do. I really want people to get that too. It can be very painful to be, in a profoundly important relationship like a marriage, and to realize that you're radically different from that other person in ways you had no idea because you both like maple nut ice cream and the Red Sox, and I'm probably alienating some people, but let's say you had all these things in common, but you didn't know that your operating systems would cause confusion because you have a transactional person or an empathy triad blind person, you have an empathy triad sensitive person, and those two systems clash unless you engage in the empathy triad engagement process, which is the 7-step interface protocol. Yeah, Anna says, yes, that's right, Dr. Kathy. Are the Aspies lonely? I wonder often because it seems like it isn't an issue or a thought, which is not true. Yeah, they often just cut it off and it's stuck down there in their emotional quadrant that they never access. Like I had a client once years ago, she, sometimes they'll tell you they don't have feelings, which is not true. It's not true. But I had this woman come in, she was very young, she was 24, and her parents wanted her to see me. And she was sitting there being ever so polite, masking not very well. I mean, you can sort of tell when someone on the spectrum is masking. But I said, well, tell me about, do you recognize having any anxiety because your parents are concerned about all your anxiety? And she goes, no, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't have problems with that. And I said, well, let me describe this to you. Anxiety might be like feeling like right now in this room that you would like to get up and run out of here. And her eyes got as big as saucers, and she goes, I said, is that how you feel? She goes, yes. She had no idea that would be anxiety. She felt like running out of my office, right? And yet, she didn't know that she may feel like that a lot, and that gets in the way of her interpersonal functioning. Many people on the spectrum don't know they're anxious. And then when they finally discover it, they're shocked. So you can't often ask directly because they're not used to sorting for feelings. They're used to sorting for thoughts. So I gave her a thought to think about. Well, it could be like, I was guessing, but like you feel like running out of this room. That's what anxiety would feel like. She goes, oh, yeah, I do feel like running out of this room. So now and we had an opening then. We could use that to help her gather more information about her anxiety disorder so she could heal that part of herself. And then Louise says, have you heard of PSP, kind of a palsy, Parkinson related? No, I don't. I mean, it sounds sort of familiar, but I don't know, Louise. But rather than having you launch into all of this, do you think it has something to do with how other neurodiverse conditions have empathy dysfunction, have difficulty processing? Is that what it's about? Because one of the things I've noticed is that it doesn't have to be just autism. There are other neurodiversities. ADHD, for example, if somebody doesn't have their ADHD regulated, they miss cues also. Or they can feel interrupted and have to go back to the beginning and start all over again just because you ask a question. Right? So that's disruptive to the interactive process. Oh, she says it's related to dementia and Asperger's friend of mine. Okay. Yeah, we can kind of get on a different track if we start talking about dementia, because that's another way that you can feel lonely, isn't it? If you're in a relationship with somebody who's got dementia, there's ways in which your interactions do not go smoothly. They forget important things about you. They forget that you were there this morning and brought them breakfast or whatever it is. So I do think, boy, that's tough, because if somebody has autism or Asperger's syndrome, high functioning autism, and they've got dementia, boy, that's sad, isn't it? It's sad for you and it's sad for them. Like I said, life on planet Earth is treacherous. Doesn't give us a break sometimes. We have to sometimes figure out, how can I still stay loving in a relationship like this? Because that person deserves to be loved, right? They deserve to be taken care of. Yeah. And she says, yes, my Aspie has aphasia worse than me with TBI. And then it's very similar to Anna's comment, because of the disconnect, because of the empathy triad blind stuff, not incorporating easily and comfortably, not just how they feel, but how you feel, and being able to talk about it. The conversational part is so important for us, isn't it? It's really important. We want to hear from the other person that they get what we're saying, or doing, or feeling. Even the fact that I guessed that this autistic woman in my office might be anxious because her masking behaviors were just incongruous, right? When I guessed right, her eyes popped open, and then we could make some progress. Yes, yeah, when she says he started swallowing his words, maybe another neuropsychiatric test. Yeah, I'm not, that's not my specialty. I don't know the crossover between autism and dementia, but I think the dementia experts are probably have the best resources for you. And you know, people, Louise mentioned this, the TBI stuff, um, the, you know, because she's identifying as having TBI, she's aware, even as technically a neurotypical, she's aware of what she's missing. And that's an important distinction. When you're on the spectrum, a lot of times you're not aware of what you're missing. It doesn't, it, you don't, you started out autistic, you were born autistic. Louise wasn't born with a brain injury. So she can even be aware that it wasn't always like this for her. And that's a huge healing message. So then Anna says, I do not think Aspies are able to have a conversation longer than 3 minutes and they check out. Yeah, that's that phenomenon of transaction. if they think that a conversation with us is to answer the question or to shut down something that we're saying. We're supposed to get to the point, they get to the point, and then it's over. As opposed to what neurotypicals do is we expand the conversation to include other things. When somebody brings up something that wasn't really on the topic, we might even say, well, that's interesting. I'd like to learn more about that. Can I finish where we were going with this one? But then let's come back to what you just said. It was really interesting. Or we might just jump right into the new thing because we're connecting first, gathering data second. Whereas our transactional autistic loved ones are gathering data and they're trying their best to get to the point. Many times they will say things like, I have trouble tracking my wife's conversation because she tells so much backstory. And think it's backstory, it's extra information, right? Or they just or one of my friends who's on the spectrum, she says, she's a writer, and she says that since she started putting all those extra words in her writing, her neurotypicals like it better. She calls them extra words or doodles, extra things that aren't necessary, but she puts them in so that the neurotypicals will be happy. She doesn't understand that we're not just looking for extra words. We're looking for connecting words, words that bring us together. So let's see here. I think Louise said, she mentioned the balance problems for him that he disregards. Right. When somebody is on the spectrum and they have a head injury, or excuse me, not a head injury, but maybe dementia, it makes sense to me. I don't know this area, but it makes sense to me that he's not even paying attention to his body, but we do. Neurotypicals are tuning in, not just to our feelings, but to our proprioceptive skills. And it's more like, so I have a client who's a race car driver, and he does not think about driving. He just drives, right? He just drops into his body and does it. And he's on the spectrum, so he can do that, okay? But it's more like it's a totally different category than the rest of life. Whereas neurotypicals are going in and out of these places all the time. They're moving in and out of our thoughts, our feelings, our intuitions. We're moving through that system over and over and over again and pulling pieces out here and there that then we make sense of in the context of the conversation. Yes, Louise, I think she's commenting here to Anna's comment, mind changes, convo to facts. So for us, a conversation, for neurotypicals, I'm referring to me, for us, a conversation is interactional, it's connecting. It's always important that you stay away from the facts. If the connection is lost, we go back to connecting and we throw those little lines out and we repeat ourselves, trying to bring the person back into the conversation with us. It's not about us, it's with us. But if the neurodiverse person doesn't understand that process, they just keep trying to nail it down to what are the facts here? What's this about? Where are you going? What's the bottom line? What's the punchline? Right? Because for them, they think that's what it's about, that you're just bringing up something because you want their opinion. How many of your autistic loved ones have said, well, why'd you ask me for my opinion if you weren't going to do it? And we ask for their opinion to have a conversation, not to do as we're told. So it's an interesting thing when you start to understand the differences here between in conversational Aspergian, when you're talking with somebody who's very highly transactional, because that's a system that was easier for them to understand. Because remember now, they're high-functioning autism. They have high-functioning autism. What that means is that among the autism spectrum, they are highly functional autistic people. They're not as highly functional as neurotypicals are in having a conversation. So what they did is they relied on their intelligence to cognitively analyze things, and that's where they feel most comfy. What's the bottom line? Where's this going? Analyzing the data set. We feel more comfortable going with the next thing that comes up and the next thing, and we might like diving into the research and learning things too. We might be fascinated by some, learning some new music or researching a project for uh, a book. I love doing that stuff. I like to research, and get a whole bunch of data. But then I want to integrate it. I want it to mean something, right? We don't stay stuck in that transactional side. We go back and forth. Okay, we're going to wrap this up in just a couple minutes. So does anybody have anything else, any other questions they want to ask? I'm glad that you're saying this, Louise. So helpful, Dr. K. And the same with Anne, as she's going, yes, exactly, Dr. Kathy. And James, yes, yes, yes. One of the things that we get from these conferences, not just Facebook, but the in-person ones, is we get validated for the way we're thinking that we don't have words for. My job is to help you get some words, right? We don't have words always to describe this experience we've been having in a neurodivergent relationship. And if you went to a therapist and asked for words, they often don't know what to say either, except, I kind of like you and I want to help you and let's help you with your anxiety and whatever else. They don't have the words for it either. We need to know that this exists, that this energy mix-up exists, right? And we can't quite grab a hold of it, but there's little signs. Like I said, masking. Hey, let me talk about that for 2 seconds. Masking isn't neurotypical oppression of the neurodiverse. It's not at all. Neurodiverse children begin masking fairly young as toddlers. And it's not because mommy and daddy are forcing it. It's because they're excellent observers of the data set of human beings. They notice the human behavior and they copy it. They mimic it. That's masking. The problem is, as neurotypical children get older and they develop their empathy skills more, they begin to expand on what those mimicked behaviors mean. And they start developing their own personality and their own behaviors, right? So they develop an empathic understanding of those behaviors, whereas the neurodiverse person often stays with the copied behaviors, the mimicked behaviors, the masking behaviors. So they develop a lot of behaviors that look like they're socializing, but they really aren't. Does that make sense? So I'm going to take a lot more time to talk about that in a future conference since we don't have time right now. Oh, and James just said I had a technical glitch. The video froze. I had to reload the web page to revive the video. Is it the same link, James, that we already have back here in the, I want to make sure it's the same link that he posted for us. Not getting a message back just yet. So all you have to do is scroll to the top of the page and grab that link and go join. James has done this a couple other times, which is really sweet. He's volunteered to host a sort of after-party discussion. Okay, good. It's the same link. So just go copy and paste it and pop it in your browser and go to James's after-party. And remember, this is a private thing. It's not something that Dr. Kathy's doing, but I still want to urge you to keep everything private, right? It's a confidential discussion. It's not something you're going to go and talk to other people about. Okay, take care, everybody. Thank you for joining me. This will be posted on YouTube as well as Facebook, so you can listen to it again. And if anybody has questions from today's conference, just post them on Facebook. I'm pretty good at scrolling back through and answering. Okay, take care, everybody.